As you can see, there is some work going on in our sanctuary. You can see the monitor and ladders, and I thought it was a great reminder that not only is our sanctuary under construction, but in God's world, in God's sanctuary, in this sacred place on sacred ground, we are all under construction. It was an image I thought would be very good for today's devotion. The Lord be with you. Jean tells of how her husband, a photographer, gets lots of requests for him to touch up photos, like erasing crow's feet and cropping off midriff bulges. So he wasn't surprised when one client said, "Can you take 30 pounds off me?" At least he wasn't surprised until she added, "And put it on my sister." If only losing weight was so easy. Every time I go to the doctor, he tells me I'm too fat. I need to lose weight. What miraculous insight my doctor has. How in the world did I miss this? I had no clue that I was overweight. My doctor must be a genius. How often have you gone to see a doctor and come away with a prescribed medication to be taken as needed? When you run out, you return to the pharmacy for a refill, hoping the prescription hasn't expired. You repeat the process for the rest of your life because you need that medicine for your physical and emotional well-being. Take as needed. But there is another kind of prescription. A doctor told of a friend of his who was prescribed a medication to be taken 4 times a day. Quote, "About halfway through the month, he ran out of it, then implored me to intervene on his behalf to get the prescribing doctor to refill it earlier than the permissible date. My friend's problem was that he had taken the med as needed in his sight, not as prescribed by his doctor," unquote. I wonder if that is a pretty good description of how some Christians live out their faith, pulling God out of their pockets like a comb, but only when needed, forgiving some people, but not others, because what some people do just can't be forgiven, as needed, but not as prescribed. Encouraging some, but passing others by because they can make it on their own, or they got themselves into this situation so they can get themselves out, as needed, but not as prescribed. Being faithful and gathering together in worship and growing in grace and the knowledge of Jesus Christ by attending Sunday school or treating the church as the pharmacy we visit for refills. Oh yes, I went there, as needed, but not as prescribed. Feeding the family, but not the stranger, as needed, but not as prescribed. Turning our backs to all anger and thoughts of vengeance, or most of them anyhow, because some anger is righteous, and some people simply deserve what they get, as needed, but not as prescribed. On that last one, the statement about anger and vengeance, a story out of Fort Sumner, New Mexico, describes the power of revenge. Luciano Mer, 81 years old, caught a mouse inside his house and wanted to get rid of it. He was burning leaves out in his yard, so he carried it out and threw it on the fire. According to Fire Chief Juan Chavez, the burning mouse ran back into the house and set the dry brush around it on fire. The flames spread and burned the house down. The inhabitants mercifully escaped unharmed. The chief reported that he had seen a lot of house fires, but never one caused by a malicious mouse. When it comes to the living of our faith, who among us have not at some time acted like a malicious mouse? when it comes to the living of our faith. Who among us can't cry out the lament of Paul? Why do I keep doing those things I know I should not do, and not do those things I know I should, as needed, but not as prescribed? So much of what we are called to do as Christians, as disciples of Jesus Christ, can be such hard pills to swallow. Most of the Sermon on the Mount qualifies as a prescription we'd just rather not have filled in the first place. Pray for those who persecute you, feed and give water to your enemy, give someone who steals your coat the shirt off your back also. What a wonderful way to walk in this world until we are the ones called upon to do these things. I end with something said in Sunday's service. God's people doing things God's way, as prescribed, according to God's rules. Otherwise, what's the point? That is truly the best way I know to praise our God, living our faith not as needed, but as prescribed. Amen.